Welcome to the Project Mom Podcast. I'm your host, Emily Gorey, mom of a sweet baby girl and an ever-evolving entrepreneur. On this show, we will explore the intersection of motherhood and entrepreneurship. We will share stories of moms just like you and me with the goal of fostering community and comfort in knowing that we are not alone in our experiences. Please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to ensure you get all the updated episodes and releases. Welcome to today's episode of the Project Mom Podcast. Today I'm talking with Grace Blacksea. She is a new mom and founder of Quench Collective, a community for like-minded leaders who believe in doing business differently. She supports women in cubicles and coffee shops cut through the noise, stand out in the crowd, and build something that they really believe in. Through blending strategy and support, she's on a mission to help modern leaders design their businesses around their life, not the other way around. So Grace, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited about this.
Yay! I know I always get like goosebumps and chills when I get introduced to somebody new who is excited about sharing their story and just wanting to kind of bring comfort to kind of a group of women that we all really belong to. And it's just makes me really excited that more and more of us want to share our story. So thank you so much.
Of course. Oh yeah. I'm an open book for that reason. I feel like I've got nothing to hide. I feel like the more that we can share our stories, it's the better. So hopefully this does help someone.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And maybe let's just start with your entrepreneurial journey. So you started Quench Collective prior to becoming a mom. So I would love for you to just walk us through that journey and what did the process look for starting your business?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So it was about now 8 years ago, just about actually this month. Oh my gosh. Yeah. This month. I'm just having this realization right now. So yes, I mean, that's not a great thing. Celebrate yourself. Do better. I'm not the example of that. But yeah, about 8 years ago, I decided, I should say, to leave my job and just make it all happen. I should say I actually took this business full time, leaving like my very last job and or contract position, whatever it was, to take Quench full time about 4 years ago now. And when I did that, I mean, there was absolutely no looking back, but 8 years ago, I was kind of like, listen, there's something that I am not finding in this world, which is a community of people who just want to feel supported and don't want to feel competition with each other and want to feel like, we all come to community with all of these different skill sets and levels of brilliance. And I think the beautiful thing is that we can share them. And so when I actually started the business, it started as a product-based business. And what I was doing is I was going out to sell my products in the kind of, I guess, physical space of markets. And markets have blown up in the past, I would say like decade. It is no longer this kind of small, maker's market situation. There are these very big, very beautiful examples of what's out there. And, when doing that, I realized like the moment I stepped into that room, you can like taste the entrepreneurship. Like it is just the coolest thing. Except interestingly enough, I think especially for product-based business owners, they wouldn't necessarily define themselves as entrepreneurs. They're like, I'm a maker or I'm a product, like I have a product. This is my business. This is what I make and do and put out into the world. And, something that I realized very quickly was that I could have cared less about the product that I was making. And I so badly just wanted to know everything I could know about, more specifically, these women in the room. I was just like, wow, I want to know your story. I also want to know, I would walk past booths and see like, this person obviously knows what they're doing from a marketing perspective. This person obviously knows what they're doing from a product perspective. And then if that person and that person talk to each other, what could happen? That's pretty, and everyone felt so siloed. It's also such a kind of awkward situation because you have these booths set up next to each other and you're just like, it feels weird. Sometimes you could tell people were struggling with like, do I talk to that person? This is weird. Like, I don't know what to do here. And so I felt that I'd always been a connector in my life. And after going to a few of these events and actually connecting a few people and saying like, oh, across the room, you should go check out this person. They have an example of whatever it may be. I knew right off the bat that this was what I was meant to be doing. Not to mention all of the other, even in like my corporate past life, even when I would work for big organizations, small organizations, nonprofits, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It was so clear that kind of every journey had led up to this point of bringing people together in community and helping them to use their skill sets to better each other. So stepping into that role was something that, yes, I did way, way, way before having a child. And in doing so, that also meant that I had quote all the time in the world, right? Like that was something that I definitely have had a lot of grief around of, oh my gosh, I could just, start my day whenever I wanted, or I could work until whenever I wanted, or take as much time doing that project or whatever it may be. I mean, it's a completely different world, mainly because I'm a completely different human being. I mean, completely different. I sometimes don't even recognize myself and who I was 7 months ago.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild. So yeah, started this entrepreneurship journey quite some time ago. And now it has come to be a completely new thing now as a mom.
It's really quite remarkable. And I love that you shared a little bit about the changes and different emotions that you feel, right? This kind of grief of loss of time or flexibility or freedom to function the way that you thrive, right, in a business. And I think there's a lot of reflection that we do as business owners, and even before becoming moms, too, of saying like, okay, how do I best work? Right? Maybe it's I sleep in and I get 2 to 3 hours of really heavy duty, intense work done throughout the day. And then I go take a walk and I have this flexibility. It's something that pulls us to entrepreneurship, right? For a lot of us to create this schedule for ourselves. And then we become moms and there's this tiny little baby human who needs us way more, I think, than I expected to be like physically needed all the time. And you lose that flexibility. And that is part of a grieving process. So I do really appreciate you sharing that, because there is a lot of happiness and love that comes from this next stage of our lives, but there is absolutely a level of grieving that happens.
Yes. Big time grief. I mean, I think that the reason maybe we don't talk about it as much as mothers is there's maybe this kind of negative connotation associated with grief, because it's sad, it's hard, it's heavy, it's
uncomfortable.
Deep, it's uncomfortable. It's sometimes dark. It's very dark. And I feel like, I think there's something like 40 to 41 different types of grief, right? It's not always just about like loss of life. It can be at the, for everything we gain, we always lose something, right? It can be of, like you were just saying, loss of time, loss of freedom, loss of availability, loss of experience. There's so much that it can be. And it's so true that it's the wildest experience, I think, of becoming a mother, because, you welcome in this life, like this just really incredibly beautiful thing and human in person that you have this overwhelming love for. You also are escorting out a lot of things that you had before. And I think that grieving is maybe the only way to properly process that. Maybe I shouldn't say the only way, right? Like it's like the only thing that you can do, but I think that it actually is really beneficial to grieve it, because I think what can happen is that can also, of course, turn into resentment or frustration or whatever it may be, that I'm never going to have that thing again. Oh my gosh. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've found myself in tears around it many times, but I think that like the grief is almost necessary.
Absolutely. I really appreciate that, because I see a lot of comparison to my own journey with that, of this moment, these pretty heavy moments in the first year of my daughter's life of resentment showing up, because I felt at times that it was the new reality and I should just accept it and this is what I chose it. I made this decision. I should just accept it and live in these moments of frustration because my husband gets to go off to work every day. And I've, lost this, flexibility, this freedom that I once had to, function individually, but also on aspirations for myself and things like that. And I think the piece for me that was missing was this processing of grief and understanding that I was not alone in some of these moments. And this podcast itself allowed me to kind of do that processing of grief with others, to know that we're not alone and that community really is such a big piece of this. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And I would love to know, when you were pregnant, you had found out you were pregnant and you were going, through this transition, were you at all aware of that kind of layer or element to your life changing? For me, it was a complete blindside. I wasn't prepared. No one mentioned to me, support yourself. Right. How can you support yourself? So was there a way that you supported yourself through your pregnancy to give yourself the space to continue to grow for you, your aspirations, but also allow yourself to be present and be a good mom for this newborn baby?
Yeah, that's a great question. To be honest, yes, I think I did anticipate it. And I want to also quickly say, and then I'll explain that and I still, even when anticipating it, it still blew my mind, the amount of grief that I still had around it. In fact, my husband and I waited for a long time in our relationship to make the decision that we actually wanted to have a child. We weren't sure that we wanted to. And early on we were, and then it kind of changed just as life grew and the world shut down and there was all these things. And we thought to ourselves, I'm not sure if this is a hell yes for us. And if we're not sure, we definitely shouldn't, we shouldn't be doing this. And so I also had seen for years, for almost a decade, I come from a very big family. My friends around me for almost a decade have been having children. And I sat there maybe with them in their grief, not knowing the experience, but sat there with them in it and not knowing, I had no way of relating to it, but did my best to sit there with them. And so I could feel it. I could feel it coming off of them. I could see it happening. I could also see it changing. I could see it getting more manageable. I could see it getting easier. I could see it. Then all of a sudden, here comes a really hard season. I could see the ebb and flow of what motherhood was all around me. And I think that maybe this sounds weird, but hopefully it resonates when I say, I think I was grieving it before it even was here, because I knew it was I was trying to race to get to this part of my life where I had enough done that I could be okay with grieving. And that was a total facade. That did not exist. That did just how they say there's never a right time to have a child. That really is true. Cause we could always wait until we had this much in our bank account, or we had this thing on sign in the dotted line, or we had that thing secured, or that enter thing here, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it's not about, I think, what we have. I do think, I will say, it did require a level of maybe healing on my end and development on my end, which not everyone experiences before children. A lot of, I think we always require healing and development, to be quite honest, but there was a level of it, this belief that I had to do this afraid. In fact, the biggest feeling I had, I can honestly say, I did not grow up saying, oh my gosh, I cannot wait to be a mom. That was not me. And I know that's the experience, I would say, for a lot of women, but that was not me. Motherhood scared me. I had a single mom growing up. I helped raise my little brother. I saw how much work it was for her, and it scared the shit out of me knowing what was coming for me, right? It never looked easy to me. Motherhood never felt like it looked easy. There were some moms that made it look easy, but that was not my experience. And I still have a fantastic mother. She did everything to make our life really full and joyful and wonderful. And even then, I could see how hard it was. So I had this major fear going into it. And I'm not sure, to be honest, that fear ever went away. But I definitely, even throughout pregnancy, something that I did do is like, for example, every time I would sit down and just have a hot drink in my hand, or I would be by myself and take myself out to lunch, or I would be doing X, Y, and Z. I tried to stay so present in these moments of, I will never have this again. So sit with it and enjoy it. And then I could always feel this tinge of grief come in, just that, you are never going to have this again. But what made that, what also came with that was I'm feeling present, I'm feeling grief, and I'm also feeling grateful for it. And so I think sitting there just with that stuff was important and really freaking hard to do, right? Because as someone like myself who is this, unfortunately, I've had this major addiction to busyness in the past. My life moves at an incredibly fast pace, which I'm sure a lot of people kind of relate to. And so it required so much of me to slow down and like sip that in. And I'm realizing that on the other side of having my child's earth side, that it is very much the case still. Like I will never get that 5 minutes back that I just had. So how can I sit here and just be present in this while also being a business owner, while also being a friend, while also being a wife? It's just this big culmination basically of and. So I don't know, not that you asked this, but I don't know that there's anything that we can do to really like anticipate, because I don't know. Did you feel this way when it was like, okay, motherhood came and I took all the classes and I did all the stuff and I read all the books and I did this and I talked to friends, and nothing could have ever prepared me for what I've experienced and continue to experience?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love that you shared this reality for yourself of not knowing if motherhood was for you. And I appreciate that, because I experienced something very similar. I have a wonderful mom. I had a wonderful childhood. She made everything, I don't want to say perfect for us, but she did her best to make sure that my sister and I were taken care of, had what we needed, felt the love, had a present mom. And I was terrified of becoming my mom. Not in that I didn't want to be the mom that she was to us, but I didn't want to be who she was to herself in those moments, which was a lot of self-sacrificing. And that was their generation. That was the expectation. That was the agreements that her and my dad made, that, she would put everything else on pause to be home with the kids. And it was a choice that she made. And I think at times was frustrated, but loved it, right? I mean, she never made us feel anything other than loved, and she wanted to be right where she was. But I feel like I look back at that and I say, oh my God, I don't want to do that. So it's funny you say there's no way to really anticipate, because I had a very similar experience. There was a lot of work for me, healing work done ahead of time, because I knew that fear for myself. So I actually was working with somebody to move through those emotions and those fears prior to my daughter coming earthside. And I thought I had done a lot of work to move past that, but you don't really know just how hard it's going to hit you on the other side. Yeah. And I still had a really hard first year with postpartum depression, which was never diagnosed. And I think it was never diagnosed because there was a part of me that was like, well, I chose this. This is it. Like, I'm still just processing the grief. That must be it. There's nothing else to it, which we know now is most likely not the case either. And it is wild. You can't quite anticipate the healing that does need to continue and be done. So when you talk about this type of grieving process and being present, and how do you support yourself in becoming more present or coming back to the present? Because it is natural, right, to get looped up in this, chaos, so to speak, right? Our lives move at, busy paces. It can be pretty easy to just kind of get swept up in that and move forward. So how do you recognize that you're perhaps not present, and how do you support yourself in coming back in and sitting in those quiet moments for a couple of minutes and appreciating and having gratitude for the current moment that you're in? Like, how do you support yourself in that?
Oh my gosh. I'm like sitting here just shaking my head going like I mean, every single day, it's like, I feel like it's literally every single moment. I'm like, just how can I be more present in this moment? Like it's that I constantly am just asking myself that question. I appreciate you sharing what you shared about postpartum depression. And I'm so sorry that you experienced that. I also experienced that. And so I deeply understand that, the postpartum disorders I dealt with were postpartum depression, anxiety, and OCD. OCD is not often diagnosed, and it was definitely the case with me. And so as an example of, to connect this as an example of like presence, it has been, my son is 7 months old. It has been so hard for me to, even while medicated, to turn down my OCD low enough that I can, when I put him down for a nap, which is a very new thing, by the way, when I put him down for a nap, that I can just sit with myself and remind myself that it's really important that you feed yourself. It's really important that you journal. It's really important that you just breathe, versus lean into your OCD tendencies of every single dish has to be out of the sink. Lean into your OCD tendencies of every single toy has to be put away. Lean into the OCD tendencies of knowing that that drawer in the kitchen is not exactly the way that you want it to. I mean, that is so hard. That is so hard when you're actually literally like, it's not just this thing, because also what having that as an example of one of this, just the disorders, is by having that OCD, it also is, I think, our body's way of trying to protect us and deflect from us just sitting with what's in front of us, which is really hard. Because if I go do that with the dishes, and or if I go do that with the drawer, or if I go do that with the toys, I'm actually not focusing in on the thing at hand, which may be that today is just a really hard day in motherhood for me. Like, and it actually would be better if I could sit here and just nourish my body, or if I could just sit here and breathe a little bit, or stretch my body out a little bit, or call a friend, or go sit in some sunshine. Like, it has been so difficult. And especially as a business owner, it has been so difficult in those sips of time, because they really do feel like that, like just a sip of a free moment, to not jump right on my computer and answer emails and do work and show up on social media and do all these things. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't even believe how little time I have for myself, but I can create more time for myself if I give myself the permission to do it. It is like this constant pendulum swing of all of that. I mean, and I know that you know exactly what I'm talking about, how like we have to choose ourselves far more, even when it was easy for me to choose myself before I became a mother. However, I didn't do it often enough. And I also, it becomes so much more, what's the word? Like potent, maybe, when and important that I do choose myself every single day, every single moment, because I choose my son 24/7. I choose my partner 24/7. I choose, like, it sounds so silly to say out loud, oh my gosh, but like, I choose the dishes all the time. Like, that's so sad to hear out loud, right? Like, why don't we choose ourselves? So I'll never forget when I went into labor. I actually ended up going into labor on my due date, which was so rare and so funny. But I went in for my 40-week appointment, and I didn't realize at the time I was in labor, but I was having some back pain. And I said to my doctor, like, is there anything I should be doing? I'm 40 weeks. Should I go curb walking? Like, should I eat some dates? Like, what should I do? What do you recommend? And he looked at me and he was like, no, father of 3. He looked at me, he said, no, I want you to go home and like read a book and like enjoy a hot cup of something. Like, stop trying to rush this process along. And I will never forget that. I mean, and that's like, big caveat. I was having a healthy pregnancy, right? Like, that's not always the case for everyone. But I'll never forget that. And so it is really interesting, even before this podcast, between nap times and this and that, whatever it may be, I thought to myself, okay, I've got an hour to get myself ready, that like time just for me. And I decided to take 30 minutes of it just sitting in front of the fireplace that is being streamed on my TV with a hot cup of something, and then giving myself 30 minutes to get ready. Like, I was like, how am I going to take this time that I do have, instead of focusing on the time that I don't have, and use it for myself. And that felt so good. So the answer is I have to remind myself to be present constantly. And
Yeah.
every single day, I do not such a great job of it. And then some moments I do a really good job of it. But it's just a constant choice. I think that's it. And I think it's also for women in general, it's not easy for us to choose ourselves. And then also like we've societally been taught to that we don't get to choose anything at all. So it's like this constant stripping away and relearning of, I have to choose this for myself. I don't have to, I get to, I want to, I need to, and I can see that I can show up in a much more present way when I do.
Yeah. And it really is striking when you do show up in a way. I know for myself, when I give myself the time to settle and get into my body and calm myself down, the intention in which I move forward in my day and I engage with other people is way more impactful than if I just zip my way through everything that needs to get done. I notice that like the tension between my husband and I is a little bit higher. I can tell that my daughter is looking for more attention from me. Like I feel like those days are actually harder because she is catching on to the kind of higher vibration of mine, and not in a positive way, right? Like this like really, really anxious vibration of mine that all these things need to get done, that I'm not present. And she can feel that. And I notice on those days that like when she's harder, I need to take a minute because there's probably something going on within me that's not all that intentional. I'm just kind of trying to move through as quickly as possible. So I do appreciate you sharing this like necessity of that. And when we are able to show up to take care of ourselves, whether it be sitting in front of like a very calming landscape in front of yourself, or sitting in the sunshine, or having your hot beverage while it's still hot and you're not being screamed at because you gave yourself that time. And maybe your hair doesn't look like exactly the way it would have if you gave yourself the full hour, but it is really beautiful how much more intentional we can show up in our movements. And then the things that are meant to get done will get done. And that's really all that matters. So I do appreciate you sharing that. And I'd love to know, I mean, are you back to working now after your son was born? He's 7 months old. So you're back to working now, I think, right? You're back from this maternity leave that you gave yourself. How are you incorporating that?
Yeah, that's a interesting story, actually. Interesting story. So my son was born in August, beginning of August, and I had planned to take off August through November. I was going to give myself 3 months. I had set myself up in the business like that. I had saved enough. I had, delegated enough. I had set up my employee to make sure that she felt super supported and running the things that needed to be run while I was away and just focused on myself. And then about 4 weeks into my maternity leave, I realized that I was suffering with horrific postpartum anxiety and depression, and then soon to find out OCD. And I think back to that time and it makes me sad because it's almost just feels like a whirlwind, like something that's really nervous or interesting with my nervous system when those things, I think it's my body's way of protecting me, is I just like kind of like go like completely power down and kind of shut down. And I think I was trying to keep myself alive. I think I was trying to keep my baby alive. I think I was trying to survive because of the sleep deprivation, because of all of these things, because I was dealing with a major hormonal and chemical imbalance in my body.
Yeah.
I had a friend, I've said this many times, but I had a friend who I spoke to while I was pregnant. She knew about my fears going into motherhood, about what I was worried about motherhood. And then she also knew some fears around mental health. I had dealt with anxiety and depression before I became a mom, and I had known the stats that you are something like 20 times more likely to deal with depression and anxiety in your postpartum season if you've dealt with it before. I was like, those numbers are staggering. And it almost feels like a definite, like that's wild to me. And I'm nervous about that. Like, how am I know how hard, dark, and low that was for me. And then how do I do that while trying to keep a child alive? I mean, I had no idea all the other things, like, and feeding and this and sleep and I mean, that's what I had no idea about. And so when I spoke to her before I had a baby, she was also pregnant at the time, a few months before me. And she told me something that was so impactful. She said that she had the same exact conversation with her OB, and her OB reminded her that she did not have to white knuckle through her postpartum season. It was not a requirement of her as a mother. It did not have to happen. It wasn't just like you get initiated into motherhood because you dealt with it and you didn't need support and you didn't need health and you just white knuckled your way through it. Like, ain't nobody giving out gold stars for that. That is for damn sure. You know what I mean? But we have this weird belief. I mean, also we are like biologically hardwired to just do it, right? But it's just such a horrible belief that we have to, right? And that, like, that's actually what makes us strong. Like, quite frankly, that's bullshit. And that's not true. And I also want to be clear that I am absolutely not saying that that means that everyone needs to get help and be medicated, et cetera. Like, that is absolutely not the case. But you also don't have to suffer and struggle. That is something that's really important. And I think if I wouldn't have had that conversation with her, I wouldn't have gotten help as soon as I did. I mean, it took literally every last sliver of energy I had, which was zero at the time, to ask for support and ask for help. So that took, like, let's fast forward another 6 weeks. I mean, by the time that November 1st rolled around, I was in absolutely no place to come back to work, which infuriates me because think about all of those people who have to go back to work in 4 weeks, in 3 weeks, get absolutely no time at all to care for themselves, their mental health. Like, there is a problem with our system. There's no doubt about it.
Absolutely.
So with that, I ended up taking more time. And I actually just kind of fully came back to work. I came back behind the scenes to our community members and clients that are in our programming and whatnot. But I just came back. I mean, I have a 7-month-old. I just came back at 6 months. The reason being is I needed that time to quite literally heal. I felt like I had this brand new skin on me, and it was just like growing back even. It was just coming to life. Like, I felt just as new as my son, if you will. And so I was in no place to be leading. I mean, I think that leadership is something that requires so much vulnerability from us. And if I were just coming back and quote, faking the funk, which that I don't think that's something that I necessarily would recommend to do. If you ask me in my 20s, I'd be like, oh yeah, you got to fake the funk to get where you need to be. But that is not something that I felt was genuine or authentic. And so I am now back after 6 months. And I am also here to say that even at 7 months, I would say, like, gosh, I think that mom should be given a year. Like, there's so much that can change. It changes constantly. But I'm back, and I'm back in a completely different way as a completely different human. My priorities and my time are so much different than I had even thought they were. And I am leaning into this new season of life in a new way every single day.
Yeah. I think there's so many nuggets in what you just shared that I think we could go in a couple of different ways here. And I think the first part of it is like this societal pressure that is put on women to bounce back in a number of different ways, right? We are completely different human beings when we have a kid, right? It just shifts our priorities. You said it, right? We hormonally are dealing with so much, like our fears, we're processing and healing so many different personal things. We're sleep deprived. We're, physically maybe not even recovered. I had a really tough physical recovery. It took me almost 8 weeks to physically recover from birth. So like these women who are expected to go back to work, even in the 3-month period, which sometimes is what we see corporately for women, right? a lot of women don't even get that luxury of like the 3-month period. But even that, right, for you, if you were going back to a corporate job or another job, like would not have allowed you to show up in a way that you could thrive or even survive, really, right? And I think it puts a lot of women in this really tough space of, what do I do now? How do I support myself through that? And it's just, I think you're right. It's just a comment to this like really messed up society that we're in right now, and that it doesn't support women in this. We're meant to, white knuckle our way through this like weird, uncomfortable change. Then we're supposed to go back like nothing ever happened. We're supposed to show up as employees or as business owners like nothing changed. And then we're supposed to mom this child like we're not business owners or like we're not, full-time employees. And it's just a really tough place to be in, especially if you feel alone in it. So I do appreciate you sharing too this like sense of taking every ounce of energy that you had left to ask for help. And so I'd love to know just quickly, and then I'll touch on a couple of other points that you said, because I loved all of that, is like, what did asking for help look like for you? Was it going back to your OB and asking for some like medical help? Was it, talking to your partner and getting, some support that way to kind of, make some different changes? Like, what did support look like for you?
Yeah, I feel super grateful to have felt super supported and resourced, which I know is like not the case for everyone. And so my hope is that we can continue to support each other and in our communities so that everyone can feel that, because it's necessary. My husband, that was like the initial conversation, just around like, wow, this does not feel good. This does not feel like me. Like I'm hurting so badly inside. And I also had some physical stuff. Like for me, anxiety manifests in not really being able to eat a lot. And so something that's extremely important after, birth is that you are nourishing your body. And I wasn't even able to do that. I was, that's so hard. And I was lucky to have my mom with me during the postpartum season. And, she noticed, of course, a lot of that as well. The amount of tears I was crying, while super, super normal. And when we're having, when we are postpartum, it was nonstop for 4 weeks. And like, that is something that, they were tears of happiness, but it was frustration because, well, I should say they were tears of sadness, but I was frustrated because I was so happy. Every single time I looked at this baby, I kind of felt like I was being robbed of this experience, and this really special time that I knew I was never going to be able to get back. So it did look like me reaching out to a friend that I knew had dealt with it and saying, hey, this is what I think that I'm dealing with. What should be my first step? And I feel like that was even resourced, having, that friend having the courage to share with me what she went through meant that I was able to reach out when I felt like I had some of the signs as well. So it was first with my therapist. It said, hey, I think this is what I'm dealing with. And it was the encouragement for her to go to my OB and have that conversation with him and say, this is what I'm dealing with. And he asked me all of the, I think, medically necessary questions, and then also very human questions of, how are you? And how can I help? And how can we get you back to a baseline? And also explain the science to me, which I thought was very important, of where your hormones are right now are not at a normal level. And what's actually going on with your body wow. It is just like off the Richter scale of what just happened and also what is still happening.
Yes.
And so he sent me, we ended up with a diagnosis, and then he explained the process of medication to me, which I was very honestly willing to take off of the bat. I think that the cases he's usually met with people who aren't, and that's okay too. He did give me other things. He said, it's also incredibly necessary that you're drinking water. It's also incredibly necessary that you go outside every day. It's also incredibly necessary that you're breathing, and that you hand over the baby when you are feeling like it's okay to go outside and take a break. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So it was equal parts permission, medical advice, support, emotional support, that sort of thing. But it was really that chain kind of that got me finally to where I ended up being.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is incredible because I think the first asking for support yourself is so huge, but then finding that reciprocated on the other end is monumental, I guess maybe is the word I'm looking for. It's like, I think about the experience that I had, right? 6-week checkup, you go through, that pretty generic checklist. I think the piece for me that was missing was that human level, that because I looked at those checklists and I said to myself, well, not all the time. So I don't think that really counts. And this is what I'm seen modeled for me in other like motherhood examples. So this just must be how it is. So, like, there's nothing wrong with me. Right. So it's educating yourself, recognizing that this baseline doesn't have to exist. And I would also argue too, right? Pushing back if something doesn't feel right. I mean, it's so monumental to have somebody receive that request of yours.
Right. I think that like what you just said, I want to amplify that because that is so important. And I hope people can really hear that, is that it's not I think that the judgment comes around, oh my gosh, something is wrong with me. But it's really about what you just said is like, something doesn't feel right. Right. Like I think that is probably the first test in motherhood, is like trusting your gut when something doesn't feel right, and not of course with your child, but with yourself. Yeah. Like, cause you immediately, that baby comes out or you are given that, whatever it is. And it's like everything goes to that. And you're right. That 6-week checkup, I mean, my goodness, that does not happen in other countries. Like it should be, you go from seeing a doctor every single week in some cases throughout your pregnancy, and then just 6 weeks, and then we'll see you in 6 months. That doesn't make any sense. That just makes absolutely no sense. And I also received those I don't know if that you did as well, but I also received those same mental health check-ins at my son's milestone, so his visit. So at his month appointment, at his 3-month appointment, whatever. And so we just went, last month was his 6-month appointment. We just went to that. And the nurse said to me, actually, they're always so uncomfortable giving it to you, which I think should also change. They say to you, here you go. Like, sorry, you have to fill this out. Don't apologize to me for that. Like, this is important. You're asked, like, this is a really good thing that this is even happening. B, I think there's a flaw, in the system of like, well, like there goes your brain again kicking in. Well, I don't cry all the time, but like last week was really hard, And what else she said to me was, sorry, like I have to ask you to do this. But don't worry, it's the last time. So that means at 6 months postpartum, that's the last time I'm going to get asked, how are you?
Yeah.
Like, from a medical perspective, that's not okay,
Yeah.
So it's just, I just want to amplify what you're saying, because it's really important that even because it sounds like you dealt with some postpartum depression after the fact, which is so common. I maybe like hit it towards the beginning. It is so common to experience it later on, sometimes even years later on. It's okay. And B, if something feels off, it's probably because it's off. You're not crazy. You're not anything. You're human. You're having a feeling. It is absolutely worth a conversation with somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't even remember. And maybe that's just a telltale sign. Like, I don't even remember those I remember those first couple of month check-ins, but I don't recall me being checked in on. And I imagine probably was at some point, and I like brushed it off because I was like worried about the 20 questions I had to ask the pediatrician about, what was going on with my daughter. But
of course,
that I think the part that you touched on too, this like inconvenience that these nurses feel or shame that comes along with, oh, but I'm sure you're not experiencing it, or I'm sure it's not, that really puts a barrier to us, at least for me, feeling comfortable to speak up and to ask questions, or like, hey, actually, can we talk about this because something feels off? Or, oh, this should be the last time, so everything should be fixed by now. Or maybe it's not feeling right. There's a lot of, I look back on it now and like we have these conversations and it does make my blood boil a little bit. It makes me sad. It makes me frustrated. It makes me a little bit scared for the next go around. Like what's that going to look like? Like, you're likely to, or more likely, maybe I shouldn't just say likely, but you're more likely to experience it a second time if you experienced it the first time. And, how does that look moving forward? So I do appreciate you kind of sharing your strategy on supporting yourself through that.
Of course. Yeah. In other countries, like mothers are, a lot of other countries, mothers are checked up on a lot more, and they should be. And I think to that point, why I'm so grateful that you have a platform like this and that you're using it for something like this is that what that means is that that's when motherhood communities kick in. That's why these relationships and connections are so important, because that text message that you send to a friend just to say, oh gosh, I haven't heard from so-and-so in a while. Like, how's she doing? Or, just how are you, mama? Or like, can we go for a walk? And if you see something, say something. It's so important with mental health, and it not coming from, I think that you're this, not from a diagnostic perspective, but from a human perspective of how are you? How can I help? You know what I mean? And even if you have never been through that, I understand it can be uncomfortable, of course. But even if you've never been through that, just whether it's that you hear it on a podcast or that you heard someone having a conversation about it in line at coffee, whatever that looks like, it is so important. And like, you are worthy of getting help. It is possible. Something could just be, it might just be a 2 millimeter shift that you need, right? Again, it doesn't mean that you are broken or that you need to be fixed. It means that you need support, period. Like hard stop. So I think that's something that's so important, and that by doing so and by asking those questions and by continuing to have these conversations that you're having in a podcast like this, you really are breaking the stigma of it too.
Yeah. Thank you for those kind words. Cause I think there's always a lot of movement. Like I feel a lot of like personal movement, and I feel a lot of like healing and processing for myself when I have these conversations. So just to have a platform to hopefully provide some comfort to somebody else is just so important to me. And I know you get that, right? In this like need to connect people and support people and bring community of like-minded women together to kind of, support one another, because we do have different skill sets. Like what I see is different than what you see. And especially, when it comes to our mom friends, right? It's like you said it, even if we didn't personally experience it, we know our people, right? Like we know something's off, or we know that they're not, feeling their best, and just important to speak up and lend a hand and lend support, whatever that looks like. So I appreciate you kind of highlighting that and sharing that. And I, for the sake of time, want to touch a little bit more on your business. I'd love to know just a little bit more about has anything changed for you in terms of, I know you said you show up differently for your business, but have you made any changes in how your business functions based on what you've learned from becoming a mom? Or how have how have your priorities changed? Have you outsourced more? Have you delegated more? What does that look like in the actual functioning of your business?
Yes. And I think this looks so different for everyone. How it specifically looked for me, and I will not ever sugarcoat anything. So I'll be super, super honest, because I think you hear a lot of messaging around like, it's so important to delegate and to outsource. And it is. I want to be very, very clear about that. It is so, so freaking important. And I think that an interesting thing that happens when you step into motherhood is that the need for simplification goes through the roof, and also the expansion that you feel and being this completely new identity is pretty wild, right? So I told my husband a few months ago, like, gosh, it's wild. I feel like I've got all these new ideas and things that maybe I want to tackle, but I'm also like, why am I doing this? Why do I want to do X, Y, and Z? Like but I've seen this happen to almost every single mother where they're like, I want to do this. And I'm like, do I have time for it? No, but I want to do it, So it's like you feel this expansiveness, I think also because you just did the hardest thing in the world, no matter how you brought your child into this world, adoption. C-section, vaginal birth, whatever it was, you just did the hardest thing in the world. And you continue to every single day. That I don't know if it's that just makes us super, super extra brazen, but here we are. And we also feel the need to be so simplified. Like I want to do it. So yes, to have put in so many more systems. You should see my Zapier account, which if you're unfamiliar with that, if you're listening, it is like all about integration. So yes, I'm like, what can I zap together and integrate on the back end of my business that just does while I'm sleeping? I went even deeper with that for sure. Our team has decreased in size. I have only one contractor doing very, very kind of little work, I would say. I've also simplified the things that I am doing as well. As far as if anything was kind of an extra before, I'm not doing it as much. It just doesn't feel good. I have taken away all of the offerings in my business that do not light me up 100% because ain't nobody got time to be doing that anyways. Like there is no doubt about that. But I feel like because things shift so much in motherhood, it just is your yeses become so hell yes, and your no's become so clear. So I have taken away everything that didn't feel like 100% yes and put it on a shelf. It can come back one day if it needs to, but right now it's only things that truly, truly feel like they light me up. The other thing too is that admittedly, we do not have childcare, and we have had a really hard time finding it. We've had a really, really hard time justifying. We live in California. The cost of it is truly, truly wild. Actually, especially it's important for us to, like, for example, pay someone a living wage. So,
Yes.
for what that looks like. And so we are juggling being two working from home parents and running businesses and with a child. That is really hard. So what my day looks like is it starts at 4 p.m. and I work until 9 p.m. That is nothing in a million. Like you would have asked me before and say, I don't do that. That doesn't work for me. That's not when my whatever my peak time is or whatever. But what it actually allows me is to be with my son for the majority of the day. And I can do this other stuff at night. So to answer your question, everything has changed. Integrations have enhanced. Team has decreased in size. My commitments have become so much more solidified and grounded. And I think the biggest thing is, how can I show up in the most impactful way? And if the answer is like, does this help me show up in the most impactful way? If it's yes, then great. If it's no, it is completely off the table. So also making a lot of like quick decisions in that, where it's like, now that I have this thing, this child, this thing, like this factor over here. My decisions are just completely different because I'm a completely different human. And what I value, of course, has just, I think if anything, it's just probably enhanced.
Yes. I'm in awe of that because it's when you started talking and you shared a little bit about this like conversation you had with your husband, and it was like, I want to do all these things. I mean, that is me like to a T. I like had my daughter, I was like, but that didn't happen for me until about a year, when she was a year old. But I remember being like, I need to do something. Like I don't have any time. I don't know when I'm going to do something, but I want to create something. I want to build something. I want to share something. I want to, provide something out to a community. And I mean, my husband was so supportive. He's like, okay, like we'll find childcare. We'll do this. It took me forever to find childcare too. So, I mean, I feel you. My daughter just started daycare at age 2 in January, and it's been 3 months of heaven and hell, I guess you could say. Like a lot of sick days home. My days get totally messed up, and a lot of days where I'm like loving it because there are a couple hours, and she goes half days. She doesn't go like full days. She goes a couple hours, 3 days a week. And I'm like, oh, I feel like me again. Oh, this feels really nice. So there is this like dichotomy of when you're in those moments, probably you from 4 to 9, right? You're in this moment, you have, this time and this energy to make progress and build something for yourself. You're like, oh yeah, I can do this. And then for me, and my daughter comes home and I'm like, okay, come back to reality, Emily. Like, we're still here. This is still here. This is perfect. Like, reel yourself in and be intentional about the things that you're putting forward. So I really honor you for sharing that of like, let's scale it back. Let's see what we can put ourselves in 100% on that make me feel really good.
Yes.
Just really good.
Yes. I think that if you are doing the things in your business that make you feel really good, by happenstance, what's going to happen, what will happen is your community, your clients, your customers, whoever you are serving, whatever you are making, whatever you are doing will truly be better for it because you're able to give it all of that energy. I mean, those hours between 4 and 9 are, I get more done in those hours than I ever did just like, oh, I'm just going to like, take my time today and do my thing. Like, I mean, it's wild, right? Because it's laser focused because that, I mean, it's interesting. And again, this is a season of life. It is not going to be forever. And I think that's also what keeps me so present in it because it is a freaking gift. Like truly, it does not feel like that every day at all. But like, it really is a gift in that sense of, well, as an entrepreneur, as a small business owner, it really, I mean, I go back to that every single day. I have the utmost gratitude for the stage of life that we're in. And even if we have another child, I don't know that we'll ever be in this again. So it's like taking it for exactly what it is, because I will never even get back what just happened an hour ago. So much easier said than done, but I'm doing my damnedest, that's for sure.
Yes. And you have to celebrate that. Like you said earlier, let's just celebrate the wins, the small wins, the big wins, the present moment wins, like, because it is just so important to do that. So important. Grace, thank you so much for sharing your story and being vulnerable with us. And I would love to just give you a quick, like 30 seconds or so. How can people engage with you who are listening? What's the best way for them to interact with you?
Come hang out with us. I would say like on our social channels, you of course can always check out our website. I mean, it's informational, but it's a bit static. You'll hear from me over on social. So pretty much everywhere it's at Quench .collective. Our website is quench-collective.com if you want to check that out. Either way, any time that you press send, you will get your way to me. So I'm looking forward to just hearing from you if there was anything that was impactful or that you want to connect on, or if you need a reminder of anything at all. I mean, I would imagine Emily is also the most fantastic person for this, but yeah, so I'm excited that we got to have this conversation. And again, thank you for having such an incredible platform to do so.
Oh, Grace, you're very welcome. And we'll make sure to link all of those social handles and whatnot in our show notes so people can easily get to you.
Perfect.
Yay. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. If you liked what you heard, please help us out and leave a review wherever you listen, and consider sharing with your friends. If you're interested in learning a bit more about the project or want to share your story, please visit our website linked in our show notes below.